You know you need to get a price reduction on your listing, but you're really not sure how to go about asking for one? Stay tuned. I've got 5 tips on how to go about asking for a price reduction. If this is your first time to the channel, my name is Amanda and I teach real estate agents how to build their business without ever making a cold call. If that's something that interests you, be sure to hit that subscribe button and tap that bell for notifications so that you'll never miss a video. First up is be open and be direct. Do not avoid your sellers at any time, but in particular, do not avoid them when the house has gone on the market, things just didn't go the way that either of you planned. You absolutely want to be in touch with them as much as needed during this time. Sticking your head in the sand or just staying quiet is a sure way to let them think that you, 1, probably don't care, and 2, maybe don't even know what's going on. So you've got to approach your sellers and be upfront and say, hey, I am not pleased with how things are going. And that leads me into the next step of tell them what is taking place and why you aren't pleased with it. Focus on and keep it about the market. Ultimately, and we all know this, the market prices a home. It's not us. It's definitely not Zillow. It's not Redfin. It's the market. And the market will speak every single time. Whether it speaks the way that we want it to, we don't always have the right answer. But if you have a listing that's been on the market for a little bit of time, that's going to vary. A little bit of time is going to vary depending on what market you're in. And that's what's important. You always want to relate back to the market and reference your MLS stats. When you're having those tough conversations with your sellers, you need to let them know, hey, I have researched the stats. This is what's happening in the current market. This is how many showings we've had. This is the feedback we've received. And this is why it's time to make a price adjustment. Always relate back to the data. 1, so you're not the bad guy, but 2, the data is where the answers are. The market will always speak, and we as agents have to listen, and then we have to share that with our sellers and get them to listen as well. Be a straight shooter. It's a difficult conversation to have, but the sooner you come out and directly say to them, listen, we need a substantial price reduction, and here's why, the better. You don't want to hold off. You want to just shoot it straight to the point. Maybe they aren't going to want to hear what you have to say, but at least then you have essentially given them a fair warning. Right now in my market, if a house stays on more than about a week, depending on area and neighborhood, just the average is about a week, then that conversation needs to be had. And the sooner the better, because as we all know, houses that sit on the market become stale and nobody pays top dollar for what I like to call stale bread. Nobody's interested in that. Buyers' attention spans are about this big, so you have to make these adjustments quickly, and you also have to make it a substantial adjustment so that the house is then exposed to a new pool of buyers in addition to the pool of buyers that already said, this one isn't for me at this price. You've got to bring attention back to that listing, and the sooner you tell the sellers that and be straight with them, the better. Even if they don't agree to you requesting this price reduction, hey, at least you had the conversation and you gave them that fair warning. That brings me to the next tip, which is reduce that price sooner versus later. There is nothing worse than continuing to sit on the market week after week and just watching all of your efforts essentially go down the drain. You do not want to be that listing that we've all seen in the MLS that says, won't last, this one will sell quickly, and it's been on the market over 100 days. You've got to make these changes quickly. Once the market has spoken to you and your clients, then it's in your best interest to advise your clients, hey, we've got to react and adjust in order to get this home sold for top dollar in the least amount of time possible. The other reason that you need to get this price reduction sooner versus later is the longer a home sits on the market, price definitely becomes an issue, and of course buyers then lose interest. But also buyers then start to wonder at a certain point, what is wrong with this house? And you don't want a house that's on the market that has some stigma simply because the price is incorrect, not because anything is wrong with the house. but the longer it sits on the market, the more you run that risk. The last tip is make it a substantial price reduction. Doing these small increments is very risky because if you drop it, say only $5,000 and that doesn't do the trick, you are now on this downward slide of having to continue to reduce this listing. It's one thing to have to do one price reduction. It happens, and we're certainly seeing more of it in the market right now. That could certainly change come spring, but right now we are seeing some price reductions. Don't be that agent that is scared to ask for a substantial price reduction. Sit your sellers down. I like to do these conversations face to face so that there's more of an open dialogue and I can see my client's reaction. But whatever works for you and your sellers, so be it. But make sure that you have the confidence to say, listen, this is why we need to do a substantial price reduction. And in doing a substantial price reduction, you might find yourself in a multiple offer situation. What happens when a substantial price reduction is done is obviously a new pool of buyers is exposed to this property, but it's also then re-exposed to the buyers who had come across it and passed over it, whether it was browsing online or they actually came to see it, because it's enough of a reduction to go, wait a minute, I might be interested in this house now. So it drives traffic through the doors again, which is exactly what you want. If you just do a small price reduction that's really not enough to catch anyone's attention, you are going to find yourself continuing down that path, and that ultimately takes away from your seller's bottom line. The goal is always to get the home sold for the most amount of money in the least amount of time. And ultimately, the best way to do that is, of course, price it right from the start. You have to have an understanding of what the market is doing so that then you can advise your sellers of where the home should be priced. And there are certainly situations where the agent has their price and the seller has their price. And I would say within reason, if you are somewhat near one another's price and the seller is adamant about it, then the best thing to do in that situation is go ahead and list the home, but ahead of time, get a price reduction agreed to and signed off on so that at a certain point, you could say 7 days on the market, 14 days on the market, whatever you feel is best for the area that you're operating in. Have it agreed to that on X date, if this house has not gone under contract, that we're going to go ahead and do this price adjustment and just have the price adjustment agreed upon up front. That saves you from your sellers being angry with you and maybe forgetting that you had recommended a different price. And it also saves you from having to have continued conversations of, listen, we have to drop this price. In a perfect world, listings are priced correctly right from the start because that really is what's best for the seller. But I know in certain situations that's not always possible. So just make sure that you have a plan B agreed to upfront, and it will honestly save you and your seller quite a bit of frustration down the road. I hope you got some value from today's video, and take care until I see you on the next one.